And my friends were mad at me. They did not like the fact that I was doing this to Goofy.
You'd read a tape and it says Tevin Campbell in the booth, eye to eye.
I'm trying to get them to do a Powerline walk-around figure.
Yes!
If you remember, Chris, I said, like, are you sure about this? Like, is anybody really going to care about how this movie was made?
Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of a Goofy movie.
Yes, we are.
It's actually 30 years today, if you're watching this or listening to this, the day this episode comes out. The Goofy movie came out 30 years ago today, which is crazy.
It is crazy.
That it's been 30 years. And to help celebrate this, we actually have a really awesome interview. There's a new documentary that is out on Disney Plus today. You can go see it, called Not Just A Goof, that looks back at the making of a Goofy movie and kind of why it has stayed so popular in the past 30 years. And so we got to talk with the directors, Christopher Ninnis and Eric Kimmelton, and also the director of a Goofy movie, Kevin Lima. They all joined us to kind of talk about this documentary. So it's a lot of fun, really great interview.
Yeah, it was like such a really amazing opportunity that we had to talk to them and get to ask them, a lot of our questions that we've had about the movie and then also about the documentary itself. So I'm really excited for you guys to get a chance to listen to that.
Yeah, so let's get into the interview right now and welcome them all to the program. All right, so Chris, Eric, and Kevin, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Hello.
So really excited to talk to you all today about Not Just a Goof. Fabulous film. We got a chance to watch it. It is out now on Disney Plus. Great film. I want to start off, the documentary starts off, Kevin, with your office and kind of all your memorabilia. I just want to say that is amazing, all the stuff you have.
I was going to say, you can kind of see it right now.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I have way too much. My wife's not happy about this. I actually have everything either under my house, as you saw in the documentary, or in this office. I'm not allowed to bring this stuff into the actual house.
Oh, okay. Okay. We saw Angela wanted to know the
I want to know about
head.
the buffalo head.
Buffalo head's right here.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah.
With animal on it. That's right.
You know what? I had a little obsession with the Country Bear Jamboree for a while.
Okay.
And I always said I was going to get a buffalo head, Buff, from the Country Bear Jamboree. And one year, my wife, the woman who won't let me bring anything into the house, bought me a buffalo head.
Okay.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
See, I knew there had to be something. I think that was...
And I named him Noel because I got him on Christmas.
Oh, perfect.
That's awesome.
Well, that's great. Yeah, so it makes a great start to the film. But I wanted to start with Chris and Eric, both of you. Where did the idea for this come from, to do a documentary about the Goofy movie?
Well, Eric and I are both really obsessed with documentaries, and specifically documentaries that give you a peek behind the curtain of how things are made. We love Don Hahn's documentaries, like about Howard Ashman, or Waking Sleeping Beauty was a big inspiration for us. And we started back in 2020 when Disney Plus launched. We had just finished watching Into the Unknown, the making of Frozen 2.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Which is a really, really fascinating documentary series. And we finished it and we kind of looked at each other and we said, man, I wish this existed for our favorite Disney movie. And we kind of took us a second. We realized, well, maybe we could make it. Maybe we could make this happen. We know Kevin, and we just reached out to Kevin and said, would you be willing to go on camera as a talking head documentary? We had no idea the footage he had. We thought maybe this would go on YouTube. It would just be a small little personal passion project. And Kevin, I think, he was very supportive, almost like immediately. I think he was maybe a little hesitant at first. Like, what do you want?
I absolutely was. If you remember, Chris, I said, like, are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Like, is anybody really going to care about how this movie was made?
Yeah, was this before or after you had an idea that, like a Goofy movie has a giant following?
It was definitely, I think it was around the time where social media where it was starting
Okay.
to like populate even more, and like seeing things on like TikTok and like Instagram and YouTube. There was definitely that groundswell that was happening at the time. And actually, the documentary that Chris and I were setting out to make was going to be about the fandom. It
Okay.
wasn't until we started getting into the process that it kind of like flipped to be for the fandom, because in the documentary you see the giant box of treasures of like the old videotapes and stuff that Kevin had in his basement, and it wasn't until Chris and I were able to go through all of those to really know, like, oh wow, there are real stories here, and like we have people talking about it and like living it in those moments back then when it was made. So that's when it like, really turned like on the fork in the road for us, and where the film ended up today.
So is that why it took 4 or 5 years to make? Just going through all that
Going
footage?
through that would be a nightmare.
I mean, it was that, and Chris and I, we do work in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
Chris is an editor. I work in visual effects. So we were doing this, out of the love for a Goofy movie while we were, working regular jobs. We were doing this at night and on the weekends, and taking vacations and stuff to do all of this. So part of the time was that. Part of the time was we started this during a global pandemic. So there was navigating that as well.
I think that's an interesting parallel of the two of you making the movie, like you said, as a passion project when you have other, kind of full-time jobs. It kind of runs parallel to what you talk about in the documentary of almost the making of a Goofy movie, where that was kind of the B lower priority movie for Disney at the time. And, Kevin, I think you talk a lot about it. Like, you were kind of coming in, it was somewhat freeing. You were kind of just piecing this together. It almost felt like it was a passion project. And it's kind of interesting to see those parallels between the two.
Yeah, we kind of rode under the radar a bit, right? Because we were a less expensive movie being made at the TV division. We didn't have all those same kind of eyeballs on us, and we didn't have the pain of having to sort of do a 4 or 5 year production. We had to get this thing done quick.
And were there so you knew obviously that a lot of this footage existed, Kevin. Was there any footage that you were expecting they would find and you didn't find it? And is that maybe where the idea for the animated reenactments came from? Or I loved those animated reenactments. Those were so cool, and like an interesting creative way to just sort of represent kind of what was going on.
Yeah. I honestly didn't remember what was on those tapes. You have to remember that was 25 years ago 26 years ago I made those tapes. So I had a vague idea. I knew I had done handovers to animators, like I had done tapes of every single scene in the movie, sort of giving direction to the animators since they were in Paris and I was in LA for a little bit of it. But I really didn't have a deep conception of what they were going to dig up.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll say, Eric and Chris, what was it like as you started going in and uncovering that and kind of, seeing that's, somebody probably hasn't looked at that in 25 years.
Well, part of the excitement too is, we had the actual camera Kevin shot this stuff on.
Oh, wow.
Not only did I save the tapes, I saved the cameras.
Yeah, and you're
Kevin, you
there.
and I have a lot in common. Joe's the one that has to go through the stuff and say, Angela, can't you just throw some of this stuff away?
But you start to realize that not even Disney has some of this stuff, because this was Kevin in the booth setting the camera up on a tripod in the corner, and Eric and I would go through the tapes, and it was an embarrassment of riches for documentary filmmakers, because you'd read a tape and it says Tevin Campbell in the booth, eye to eye, and your brain just kind of explodes with the possibilities. Yeah.
And we started this. When we first went to go interview Kevin, we knew that Kevin had a demo tape of "Eye to Eye," the lead song in a Goofy movie, and we were like, "Oh, that's the documentary." So then when we saw like all of those tapes and started seeing those things like Chris was talking about, it was just, it blew our mind. We have like all the different versions of a Goofy movie, from like the pencil test drawings all the way to the final version. So, and we have that in our film, and we wanted to show that the progression of everything, and um, that's another reason why we wanted to go with the animations that we did for the animations we created to homage all the things that we saw in those tapes from a Goofy movie.
Talk a little bit about that, Chris and Eric. I think that's an interesting story about how the animated sequences came to be.
Yeah, well, we were interviewing, Kevin, Bill, Jason, and we were realizing that we had these really terrific stories that we had never heard before. Um, Not to get any spoilers, but there was, stories about casting and Katzenberg, and we didn't have footage necessarily to cover those specific stories, and it was important to us to include those stories. And so we knew fairly early on in the process we wanted to do 2D animation. Um, it seems maybe a little obvious now that it should be homaging a Goofy movie and they should be dogs, but that really wasn't our initial thought process. The animation studio in in Colombia that we worked with, named Venturia Animation, the head animator, his name's Juan, he came to us and said, I think we should consider making Kevin and Dan Rounds and all these people kind of goofifying them and putting them in the Goofy verse and make it kind of a meta behind the scenes animation kind of thing. And Eric and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. Like, that's such a great idea. So we jumped on that almost immediately. And it's fun because you have access to Kevin Lima himself, so you can show designs and kind of go, is this what you think a dog version of you would look like? I mean, it's very strange and but exciting creatively.
I'm actually in a Goofy movie. There's one shot of like me and my head of story, Brian Pimentel. I think we're in the standout sequence, and we're just sitting there like,
Oh,
what's
really?
going
Okay.
on?
That's a fun Easter egg.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's me and my head of story, Brian.
I feel like, so I just rewatched that this week.
Okay.
And I feel like there was a scene where I was like, oh, that kind of looks vaguely familiar. So I wonder if that was the one that I found. I'm going to pretend like it was, even if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the whole the films, the kind of that you took, Kevin. I mean, anybody that is a fan of the Goofy movie, if you're just a fan of like how movies are made, there's so much of that in this documentary, and that was the part like I was just most fascinated and interested by, of like looking back. I mean, it was almost like a time capsule in how hand-drawn animation was done. The editors are there actually cutting the film and everything. Now when everything is just kind of so digital,
Right.
and seeing those pencil copies and everything, it was amazing to kind of go back and see all of that. Kevin, what was it like for you going back and kind of rewatching some of that, not having watched it kind of since you filmed it probably?
Yeah, I had never watched it again. I never looked at any of those tapes. For me, it's interesting, the film, because I have a different reaction to it every single time I watch it.
Okay.
Right? There are times when I can't believe how much hair I have. There are other times, or how thin I am. There are other times where I just like recall the process. It sort of hits me really hard in the chest, and I get a little anxiety because it was a difficult project to finish. And there are other times where I'm just, honestly, I just like well up in tears again and again and again, because I'm just so grateful that the piece exists, that someone decided to take all those tapes and put that Eric and Chris put the time and the love into creating this. I mean, it was a passion project, and for me, it's just a great gift at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So every time I watch it, I have a totally different reaction. I think I have to stop. I don't know if I can ever watch it again, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that would be kind of like almost, I don't want to say an out of body experience, but it's like jumping in a time machine and you just don't know, depending on your emotional state of the day, like how it's going to hit you.
Yeah. I mean, Brenda says, your voice is so high. Did I really meet you and you had that high voice? Yeah, that was me, Brent.
Was there any footage that you guys found that you wanted to include that you thought was like a really good story, but just didn't work?
Just
Chris?
Yeah. There's just so you guys know, it's like there's a lot of footage that like there are some tapes that are just like 3 hour, 4 hour long, like art production meetings in French, like
Oh, wow.
and so it's like hard to get that into a documentary. You know what I mean? It's, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's very interesting, but unless you really like know what's going on in the room, it's kind of hard to include. But there were some other treasures that we wanted to include. Well, I wanted to include. There's an actual. It didn't get further than being boarded, but in the deleted songs section of our film, we have some. We showcase little snippets of some alternate songs from a Goofy movie. And one of those is a song called Bad Bad Boy. And we show maybe 10 seconds of storyboards of what that was. The whole sequence was boarded, and it was actually in our documentary for a while.
Yeah, the whole song was done.
Yeah, it's like a 4-minute song, and it's really crazy because Pete is singing, and
Jim Cummings actually recorded the entire song. Yeah.
Did he really?
Oh, wow.
And it's a dream sequence, all in Goofy's head. It's very, but it was blowing my mind because you're watching it and all of a sudden Goofy is next to like an alien xenomorph and like there's all this crazy imagery and I was like, I can't believe this exists. I'm like fascinated. Fans have to see this, and I was like dead set on including it.
Chris was going to the mat with it.
All 4 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And I remember I showed Eric, and he was like, this is pretty long. I don't know if we should include the whole thing. We should cut it way down. And I go, Eric, you're wrong. And I showed it to our producer, Scott Seibold, and he goes, this is long. I think we should consider. And I was like, Scott, you're wrong. And I knew we had a little screening coming up with Kevin, and I was like, Kevin's on my side. 1,000%, Kevin's going to see this. And we showed it to Kevin, and he very graciously and kindly looked at us and said, Chris, we cut this for a reason. This is very long. You got to trim this down. And it was only then I kind of reluctantly said, okay, I guess.
Okay.
Kevin, yeah.
From 4 minutes to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be like part of your, pushing out for this film. You need
like
to,
an extra,
it needs to be, like, or a reel on Instagram or something where you put that part in and be like, this is not in there, but go watch our documentary. It's awesome. Because I need to see it now.
Do you think Disney would let us? That's
Who
kind
knows?
of the issue, right?
Ask forgiveness,
I don't
not
know.
permission.
Yeah, that's right. That's
I
right.
the whole career of that.
Well, I guess you mentioned there's like aliens and stuff in it. I mean, Kevin, what was the
Yeah,
the
why the
thought
aliens?
process for even putting that stuff in there?
Well, it was all happening in Goofy's head, right? So we thought that we would, and it's all about his son going bad, right? All the things that could happen, and Pete just drilling down on him. So we included everything. I mean, the piece ends with Max in the electric chair.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he goes to prison and ends up in the electric chair. And it was just ultimately way too dark and way too long for the movie.
I mean, you said you were looking to make a contemporary movie, but that, I think was maybe a step too far.
We don't want to go Green
what's so
Mile
great
on
about-
it.
What's so great about story reels is that the story reel gets to tell you what the movie wants to be, right? It tells you as you're making it. And it told us loud and clear that this wasn't where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit more about straddling the line between honoring a beloved character, but also giving him some depth? Because I think that discussion, in the documentary was really fascinating.
Well, for me, it was somewhat practical because I had to make a 90-minute movie, or 78, I forget how long, 78 minutes, 78-minute movie about Goofy. And I sort of realized that he couldn't just bumble through the entire film. It couldn't just be a series of sight gags. I had to find another way to gain the audience's trust and their emotions, grab a hold of them and invest them. So, so this became the way. It became the universal way. Goofy had been a father in the past, and I just said, okay, let's lean into that and let's see how far we can go with that. And so that became sort of the evolution of the Goof, in a sense, right? He moved to this new place with this movie. And my friends were mad at me. They did not like the fact that I was doing this to Goofy. And I got kind of reamed by some of my friends for having done it. So it's nice to see that it's existed all these years and has caught on in this kind of way.
I was gonna say you have to be somewhat like vindicated that now it is so popular and people look back so fondly on this version of Goofy in this movie.
Yeah, there are audiences who only know Goofy as this version of Goofy, right? This was their first experience with him. And I'm just, it's a real honor that people attach to the thematic idea, which is kind of universal, right? We all have parents. Mm-hmm. We become parents. We have children, some of us, and so it's this kind of generational circle that exists. It's a universal truth.
We always knew this was like a big millennial movie, but now I'm starting to see even younger generations really getting into the film. My wife is a teacher, and there were 5 students. They don't know that I worked on a documentary about it, but 5 of her students dressed up as Max, and just on my flight, I was on a flight a couple days ago on a Delta flight, and the kid next to me was watching a Goofy movie on his on screen. It was on the in-flight film, and it just blew my mind.
So cool.
It's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, we were actually talking a little bit earlier because we were talking about soundtracks and Disney musicals, and you don't really think of Goofy movie as a musical, but it is. But everything else that came out around it, you kind of don't think of it that. But the songs like Eye to Eye, Stand Out are so popular. And we were kind of wondering, I wonder if younger kids nowadays even know a Goofy movie. Like, they know the songs, they know Powerline, but do they know the source material? So that's interesting to hear that, you're seeing young kids watching it and, knowing those characters.
Well, the kids who watched it in 1995 are now parents, right? And they're showing it to their kids.
Yeah, it's our generation,
right?
Yeah.
And that's how this movie lives on, because parents want to share something that's special to them.
Yeah. Chris and Eric, I guess did you guys both find a Goofy movie as children? Did you find it later in life?
Definitely children. And when Chris and I first met, that was a Goofy movie is like the first thing that we bonded over.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was. I remember my mom coming home with the VHS tape. I didn't see it in theaters. I missed it in theaters, which is a real bummer. But that VHS tape in the puffy case got worn out for sure. I mean, I ran that into oblivion. Yeah.
Oh.
The original Disney Plus, just all the VHS tapes.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric's holding back, but Eric went to the premiere in 1995.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That was in Florida, right? In Disney World? Okay.
Yeah, but didn't it get moved from Disneyland to Disney World?
Not from Disneyland. I think it was supposed to be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then when the whole campaign for the movie downsized, we ended up doing a premiere in Florida. That was where we did that's where we had our initial. And Eric lived in
Florida, and Kevin is my uncle. So I was I was living in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and my mom let me know, like, hey, your Uncle Kevin's gonna be here for like a movie premiere for the movie that he worked on. We're gonna go to that. I was like, okay.
It's like,
You know,
whatever.
Whatever.
yeah, but I mean, I knew that Kevin had worked, like he was like a character designer, an animator. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. But like the directing aspect, I didn't really
Yeah.
register. But then I went to the premiere. I got to meet Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy there. You can't see it. There's a poster behind me, but there's one in front of me as well, and it's the poster that Bill signed that night.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I didn't find that poster because my mom hoards all of my childhood memories.
There's a theme going on here, I find.
Yes.
She sent me like a roll of posters, and during the making of this documentary, I found the poster that Bill signed the night
Oh wow.
I went to the Goofy movie premiere. But that night is really where it all clicked for me, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is something that's real. It's a movie's not just something that you go and do; that people make them." And that's the night I decided, like, I want to be involved in this somehow, and I want to do what my uncle Kevin. I want to follow in his footsteps.
How bad did you brag as a child to the other children that your uncle is Kevin Lima?
So literally the next day after the Goofy movie premiere, it was raining because it was in Florida the night of the premiere, and I remember being given an umbrella or something, while we were there. And I I remember giving a presentation in class about the umbrella that I got at a Goofy movie premiere.
That's awesome.
Did the umbrella have like the logo? Like, does it have like a Goofy movie logo, or did it have Goofy on
It
it?
was a plain black umbrella. It like people, the kids probably thought I was a big liar. And actually, whenever I would bring things up about like Kevin, that he was like a director, they would like, you're lying. You're not, that's not real.
I was like, okay, sure,
It
whatever.
makes it
umbrella.
so much better that the
Yeah.
umbrella had nothing on it.
Yeah, oh, it's a plain black umbrella. Nothing.
They were like,
Well,
this
now,
kid,
now everybody you went to school with now is like,
They
you're like,
know.
look at me now. See, I wasn't lying.
how do you like me now?
It only took 30 years.
Yeah, I know.
So, so if you could now, if you could create another movie like a Goofy movie with like a classic character, who do you think you would like to develop a movie for? Or you're like, I'm done. It was a one
Who
stop.
are you asking?
Any
You,
of you?
Kevin.
Yeah,
I
you.
think
I think
you.
you, yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, boy.
If you could give the Goofy movie treatment to another
yeah.
classic Disney character.
Yeah, is
don't
Goofy your
know.
favorite even?
So many, so many of them have had their limelight. And, I think about, like, is it even possible to make, like, a Mickey Mouse movie? Is that even possible? I had this weird idea at one point, and I'm going to share this with you because it's never going to happen, that whenever there's a new version of an animated classic character like Mickey, like Steamboat Willie Mickey, and as he evolved through the years, whenever one of those characters is retired, that there's actually a Disney retirement home, and all of those versions live together in that home.
Oh my God, I love it.
That was one of my thoughts, and that the latest Mickey had to go there.
That
'Cause
sounds like
there's
an
a new
amazing.
corporate
That's an
Mickey.
This
amazing
is
idea.
incredible.
And it's so meta. They will never make that movie. But it was something that I was sort of going around in my head for a bit.
That's a great idea. It's kind
It
of
is.
like in the Wreck-It Ralph
Yeah, I was just
sequel
thinking,
when they
like,
had all the
yeah.
princesses in that one scene, and that was
Yes,
kind of like
yes.
this like crazy crossover.
Where they all live together.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
But this
kind of
movie,
like
every
that.
version of Mickey, all the way up to the more recent cartoons that are very graphic,
Yeah.
right? And I was thinking, oh, you retire that character. And he has to go live in the home and realize, wait a minute, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
There's so many before me. He could have like a whole breakdown. Anyway,
Yeah.
No, that's
That is-
a really
that would be
that's a
really
really
good.
interesting
That is so
interesting one.
interesting.
So
guys, do you have any
yeah,
of those?
I mean,
I'm not gonna have anything as good as the retirement home for animated characters.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't know, Angela and Joe, if you, no one, we haven't really said this publicly, but I think it's worth sharing. Is there is a post-credit scene on our documentary, and I'm just gonna
Okay.
encourage people to check that out. That's all. I'm trying to make something
Yeah.
happen here, and with
Ooh.
I don't think we caught that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there's an idea that Kevin brings up in the post credits scene of what could further the Goofy verse.
Oh, okay. We'll have to go back and check
yeah,
that out. 'Cause
no,
we missed
I
that,
know we
so-
missed that one. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. That is
That
really
is
good.
that's a rare thing. The post credit sting in a documentary.
Yeah.
We were not
Yeah.
expecting it.
yeah.
Again, this is something I tried to get them to cut, but Chris was like, "No, I'm not cutting it."
Made that.
No, and if it ever comes to fruition, I'm taking 100% credit for making it happen.
He said, "You cut my aliens. You can't cut this."
Yeah, that's right.
Kevin, you talked about, you had a lot of like friends and stuff that were mad at you from kind of like the direction you took Goofy. And, the documentary touches on, once the movie opened, critically, it wasn't necessarily like a critical commercial success. But then, it starts getting into kind of the cult status of the movie and how it's grown with social media and almost just like Disney kind of was an afterthought. So they put it out everywhere. So like it was just on TV and people, kind of started to get to know it. And one thing it got me thinking about was kind of like this world of streaming we're in now, where streaming is out there. So you can access an insane catalog of movies, but at the same time, it feels like less people want to go to a movie theater. And so you're not getting kind of the box office returns, but there's really good movies out there into streaming. And I'm kind of curious to get, all of your kind of opinions on this working in the entertainment industry. Like, do you see streaming as a positive for, hey, being able to, these maybe lesser known movies get kind of limelight, or is it hurting films getting made where maybe people don't want to take risks because it might not be commercially successful at the box office?
That's a really complicated question. It's really hard to answer that. The business is evolving, right? And it keeps evolving. And part of the reason it's evolving is because of streaming. Oof. I don't know, guys. Do you have any insight? I'm looking at it from having made movies that go into theaters, right? Mm-hmm. I've never made a streaming movie. I made a television movie. So I always yearn for that, that moment, right? To see it in the theater, to see it on the big screen. And whenever I can, I go to see films in the theater if possible, because I really enjoy that communal sort of, event. So I think I think it has changed. It's just changed dramatically. But also we've gotten a lot of entertainment that we maybe wouldn't have gotten, right? So it's a two-handed dilemma.
It's interesting because I think like a documentary like ours, it makes sense in a streaming world. It would be hard. It would be a hard sell to get this into theaters worldwide, right? So I'm so grateful for that opportunity. But to Kevin's point, I think of going to the movies almost like a religious experience. It's an escape for a couple hours with a community of people that you don't know, but you're all there because you're excited about that thing and you want to share in that experience. And that's incredibly special. It's hard. You can't replicate that at home, on a streaming service. So it is a complicated answer. There's pros and cons, I think, to all of it.
Yeah, to further that, like, to what Kevin was saying about the business is changing of it all. I feel like there's less of the spectacle stuff that's being made, but there's a lot more things and content being made, and but with that there's a lot of bombardment for people of like, what do I choose?
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is a tough question.
Yeah, it is, because like you do feel like, and you hear a lot of like, oh, these old, like an older movie is like suddenly really popular because it's on Netflix or something, and everybody gets to see it, and it's like that is a big positive. But then, yeah, at the same time, there's just this narrative of like nobody goes to movie theaters anymore. So like, yeah, studios don't want to take risks, and it is this kind of just weird thing, and yeah, you kind of wonder like, is that going to impact, how does that impact these kind of like cult classics going forward, and like a Goofy movie.
I mean, bottom line is that if you want people to go to the theaters, you have to make an excellent movie.
Yeah.
You have to make a really good movie. That's why people go to the theaters now. To be engaged with a film that will move them, right? So I know that I do this all the time. If I see a movie come out that I'm all excited about, I really want to see this film, and it kind of gets trash reviews, I back off immediately. And I say, okay, I can wait the month for this to be on my TV. Whereas when there's something that has some sort of excitement about it, or something that really sort of speaks to me, I make a point to go to the movie theater. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I guess, why do you, and again, kind of to all three of you, why do you think a Goofy movie kind of did just last so long and grow in popularity? You touch on it a little bit kind of in the documentary. I think it's a nice montage of all the different social media and kind of people talking about it and the excitement that built on it. But like, do you really think it was social media, or kind of what's your perspective on it?
I think it all started with the VHS tape, to be quite honest with you. I think when the movie went into people's homes and that generation watched that movie over and over and over again, it cemented something in them. I mean, I know I still adore The Jungle Book because I saw that movie when it first was released, and I went out and bought, my grandmother really bought me the record album, and I listened to that record album over and over and over again and relived that movie in my head. So I have this affection for that film. I think the same thing happened here, is that tape came into people's homes. They watched it, kids' homes. They watched it over and over and over again. And then social media hit that generation pretty hard. And they grabbed everything that they loved and put it online, right? They expressed their love for it. And I think communities started to form. And then Disney realized, oh, wait a minute, there's something here that we didn't know. I remember going, or I didn't get to go, I got to see the D23, sort of the very first kind of celebration they did of a Goofy movie. And Tevin Campbell showed up and sang Eye to Eye. And the place went crazy. There was a line outside. They had to turn away hundreds of people. So I think that's when it started to click for them too. And they said, okay, there's an audience here that we didn't know about. And they wouldn't have known if social media didn't exist, right? And they just people started going, okay, there's actually, we need to service this audience. And merchandise started to show up. Things started to happen at the parks. And suddenly it just, that audience just said, we want this. This is something that we've been craving since we were 5, right? Yeah. So now you go to the park and you can get a Max's Powerline popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
I still don't have one, by the way, but you can get one.
Yeah, I feel like
my wife, and also my wife does not want me to have one.
Okay. I was gonna say, we do a lot of the Run Disney races, and I feel like every race there's usually at least Max or Powerline. Like they're one of the characters.
Max and Goofy or Max's Powerline.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm trying to get them to do a Powerline walk around figure.
Yes.
Okay.
I want it so badly, but I think they cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
I want the
think so,
Bigfoot
too.
walk around character. I think like
Oh, that would be great.
That would be good.
There's actually someone who has made a Lester walk around character.
Oh, wow, really?
I've seen it at a couple of the El Capitan screenings, and it looks great. It looks like it was made for the park.
Wow.
That's amazing. I will say, watching, I believe it was Frank who did the voice of Bigfoot, watching that recording session on the documentary, that was that was amazing, that the noises he could make.
Yeah.
That was one of those tapes that we found, and we were just like, how is that humanly possible that he can do all that? Like, they didn't have to create some sound effect or anything. He's just doing it
He
all.
just did it. Yeah. Yeah. The other one was the whole the eye to eye sequence.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just, so fans of Powerline and everything, if you love the eye to eye song, there's a few minutes just kind of going through the sequencing of that and
how the animation.
how you
happened.
filmed it and did the animation.
That was
just amazing.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Can any of you guys do the dance? Have you ever tried?
I cannot.
Not well.
I was gonna say, see, I saw the look on Eric's face there, and it was yes,
tried.
I have tried.
Do you know what,
What about
they
you,
did?
Chris?
They did a '90s night at the Hollywood Bowl this past summer, and Bill Farmer actually did the dance on stage,
Wow.
which was pretty cool to see. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
He said he was sore for a week.
I have a question about Bill. I mean, is he actually goofy? Because his listening to him just in the interview, I'm like, it just sounds like Goofy. Like he was born to be goofy.
I'm kind of unsure which way it sort of moved.
The chicken or the
If
egg.
playing Goofy brought more Goofy to him, or if he brought more of himself to Goofy.
Yeah.
It was crazy when we were interviewing them, though, because he would be talking and telling stories and stuff, and then he would just break out into the like real Goofy voice, and like Chris and I would just be sitting there, and we would be like tilting our head. Like,
It is rather close. I mean, when he shifts over, there is a loopiness that comes into his voice patterns, but it's not that far from his own timbre.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is small spoiler. There is a moment in a Goofy movie where Bill needed to record in his own voice. And in a Goofy movie, you can hear it a little bit in some scenes. And I think, Kevin, I think it's your favorite scene from a Goofy movie is there's the hot tub scene where he's talking to Pete. And I think you hear a little bit more of like Bill rather than Goofy, but there's a lot of that emotion there in that scene.
I'm sure that we took a few lines from the recording sessions that he did in his own voice and brought them into that scene specifically.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
'Cause he's defending his son and his son's character in that scene. So he's gotta
Yeah, it's
like
the most real I think Goofy is in the movie.
there is a point in the film where something happened that pushed the release date back. And how do you think the movie would have been different had that little disaster not happened?
I think, I mean, it would have, that moment, if we had been able to release the movie when we were supposed to release it at Holiday of 1994, I think it would have been different in many, many ways, in that we would have been supported in a different way. You know, the studio would have supported it more because of what was about to happen at the studio. I don't want to give it away, but I think it would have been supported in a different way. I don't think the movie would have been any different,
Okay.
to be quite honest with you. I think the content of the movie would have been exactly the same. It just would have been handled differently from a marketing standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that would have impacted
Like the,
kind of
the
long-term
groundswell
success?
now.
Yeah, like if it would have come out and been more popular at the time, and then it kind of
Get
maybe
your
just went
crystal
away?
ball.
Yeah. I don't know if it would have impacted it, because I think the second thing that happened in the movie was VHS tape, right?
Yeah.
That's the second, and that would have happened no matter what,
Right.
whether we were released in November of 1994 or April of 1995.
One of the reasons why I think it lasted so long is because of the story. And at the time, it was all like big fairy tales. The scope was huge, like, Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, where this was like very real about like what it's like to be a kid and growing up like in school, dealing with your parents. It was kind of like a Pixar movie before there was a Pixar movie in a lot of ways. Um, so I think it would have like connected with kids like millennials like at that time in the same way because the story was the same. It just may not have it may have been considered more like up there with like Lion King and all of that at the time rather than like being the the cult classic darling later.
Went through documentary on a Goofy movie. What's the next documentary going to be on? What's the next beloved film from our youth that you guys are going to tackle?
we're we're gonna work on an extremely goofy movie. No, I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do that. No.
They're not. No.
I think we're goofied out actually for a little bit at least. We're just kind of figuring it out. I think we have some ideas and different things. I think Eric and I want to try creatively.
Okay.
I think the trick is finding something that we really both really care about deeply and really really want to focus years of our life on and we've had conversations about how a Goofy movie, doing a documentary on the Goofy movie makes so much sense for us, and like it was so impactful to us and who we are, both in our youths and as adults, and it would be insincere and inauthentic to try to do it with any other Disney movie. I think not to say that there aren't other projects or movies that we love that we'd love to try to tackle, but yeah, I think it's just a matter of finding something that we really love and believe in.
Can I suggest that you shy away from anything that is owned by a major corporation?
Yes,
Because that
yeah.
in and of itself has been a challenge. And honestly, I never thought that the guys would get this thing set up.
Wow.
Just in terms of like
I
the rights
thought
and the
as soon as the
sign-offs and everything?
studio finds out they're doing this, the studio's just going to shut it down. They're just going to say, nope, we don't want this. But through some miracle of the universe, the studio became aware. Don Hahn, if you're familiar with that name, producer of The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, he got to see the movie. I introduced him to the movie and to the guys, and he took it on. So these events all sort of tumbled into each other, which got it to Disney Plus. It's kind of a little miracle that it's happened.
Well, I was going to ask Kevin if you have all your footage from like Tarzan and Enchanted and all that sort of stuff, but I guess that's out now.
Do you have to ask that question? He's very organized. I need to copy your organizational system.
I do have pieces of things, not as much as I had in the past, or for this movie, for Goofy Movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had so much footage too. And I think you talk about it. You were, because a lot of it was in Paris. You weren't there. Like you were almost filming the scenes and acting out the scenes and the characters. And it kind of got me thinking because I believe that's like what Walt did on the early animated movies. He would kind of act everything out for the animators. And you guys talked about the Into the Unknown documentary. Like that was a big piece of it too. That like I think people think, and at least I did. It's like, hey, this is animated. I'm just drawing something. Yeah. But there's so much of it of like actually playing off of
actual human emotion and movement and observing the way, like what does your arm do when you make a certain gesture and whatever.
Yeah, well, as an animation director, you have to imbue physical performance, right? You have to take these two things that are separate from each other, a vocal performance and a physical performance, and bring them together in an animated character. So it's very important to have sort of a vision for both of those pieces and how they're going to come together. And part of that is to be able to physicalize, right? And so I can remember, and the reason I don't have tapes of that for anything else is because, it wasn't Zoom at the time, but when we did Tarzan, we had a video link with Paris. So I could just like get up on the table and become Tarzan, right? for them in the moment and act it out, and they could see that happen in the moment. Whereas on Goofy Movie, we didn't have that. So I had to record everything. So it exists physically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fascinating insight into it.
It was.
And as you said, they've been doing that forever, right? They've been recording physical performances of actors to share with the animators, and the animators even shoot themselves acting out scenes so that they have some sense, they can separate themselves from their own bodies and look at a performance.
Yeah.
And
It's like
translate
Severance.
that.
They have the two parts, and then they're trying to merge them together.
Well, I appreciate you all talking with us today. Again, the film is Not Just a Goof. It is out now on Disney+. It was a fascinating insight into the making of a Goofy movie, kind of the rise of a Goofy movie over the past 30 years. And it was great to be able to talk with you all on it today. So I really appreciate you guys being all on today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
You're
having
so
us.
welcome. Thank you for having us.
All right, I want to thank Chris, Kevin, and Eric again for being on the program. It was a really awesome interview. It was great to talk to them about a Goofy movie and about the documentary, Not Just a Goof, which is out on Disney Plus now. Go check it out. It's an awesome documentary. If you love a Goofy movie, if you love the making of movies, it has something for everybody in there.
And I wouldn't even necessarily consider myself to be one of the people that's like, oh, I love the ins and outs of how these things are done. But I think that what is also appealing about this one is there is a story behind it. They did a really good job of kind of weaving in their own tales about why the movie itself is so important to them. And so I think that anybody who is a big fan of just storytelling in general, and then, those other things are kind of like an added bonus, like getting the peek behind the scenes. There's so many really cool scenes that we got a chance to talk about during the interview. But yeah, even if you're not I'm not a documentary person, I check it out because I think that it was really awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun surprises in the movie, and I did go back and watch the post-credits scene after the interview because we did not see it beforehand, so I went and checked it out. It is pretty good, so be sure to watch after the credits whenever you watch it because there's kind of some exciting tidbits there that would be interesting if they kind of went that way. So, but that wraps up the show for this week. Would love to hear everybody's thoughts on the documentary, Not Just a Goof, after you check that out. Let us know if you're watching this on YouTube. Let us know in the comments, or you can let us know on Instagram. We're at Enchanted Ears Podcast over there. We want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.